Imagine living in a world where one wrong decision could end human civilization. Not because of a natural disaster, not because of a pandemic, but because two nations possessed enough nuclear weapons to destroy the planet many times over. For nearly half a century, the world lived under that fear. Children practiced nuclear attack drills in schools. Families built underground shelters. Governments spent billions developing more powerful weapons. Every political crisis carried one terrifying question: would today be the day the world goes to war? Surprisingly, daí vemos that war never officially happened. No declaration, no direct battle between the two superpowers. Yet it changed history forever. This was the Cold War. A conflict fought through politics, espionage, technology, propaganda, and proxy wars rather than direct fighting between the world's two most powerful nations. Welcome to Lociannaro, where history comes alive through cinematic documentaries. Let's begin. To understand the Cold War, we first need to travel back to 1945. World War II had finally come to an end. Germany had surrendered. Japan would soon follow. Cities across Europe lay in ruins. Millions of lives had been lost. Although the Allies had won the war, the alliance itself was beginning to break apart. Two countries emerged stronger than anyone else: the United States and the Soviet Union. Together, they had defeated Nazi Germany. But despite fighting on the same side, they believed in completely different visions for the future. The United States supported democracy and a market-based economy, where private businesses and competitive elections played central roles. The Soviet Union followed a communist system with a centrally planned economy and one-party rule. Each believed its own model offered the best path forward as Europe struggled to rebuild after the war. Both superpowers expanded their influence. Countries in Western Europe increasingly aligned with the United States. Many countries in Eastern Europe came under Soviet influence. A political divide gradually formed across the continent. In 1946, former British Prime Minister Winston Churchill described this growing separation with a phrase that became famous around the world. He called it the Iron Curtain. It wasn't a physical wall stretching across Europe. It represented the political and ideological divisions separating East from West. From that moment onward, trust between the two superpowers continued to disappear. Each side viewed the other's growing influence with suspicion. Military planning increased. Intelligence agencies expanded. Governments invested heavily in new technologies. The rivalry had begun. One of the first major confrontations came in Berlin. Although Berlin lay deep inside Soviet-controlled territory, the city itself had been divided among the victorious Allied powers. As tensions increased, access to West Berlin became increasingly difficult. In response, Western nations organized the Berlin Airlift, delivering food, fuel, and essential supplies by aircraft for many months. It became one of the largest humanitarian airlift operations in history. The crisis demonstrated that neither side was willing to back down easily. Instead of direct military confrontation, they competed through pressure, diplomacy, and demonstrations of resolve. This pattern would define much of the Cold War. Both sides avoided direct war with each other. Instead, they sought influence around the world. In 1949, another major development changed everything. The Soviet Union successfully tested its first atomic bomb. Until then, the United States had been the world's only nuclear power. Now, both countries possessed nuclear weapons. An arms race had begun. Each new weapon developed by one side encouraged the other to build an even more powerful one. Within a few years, both countries had hydrogen bombs far more destructive than the weapons used during World War II. Scientists warned that a full nuclear exchange could devastate civilization. The idea became known as mutually assured destruction. In simple terms, if either side launched a nuclear attack, both sides would almost certainly be destroyed. Ironically, that terrifying possibility may also have helped prevent direct war. Neither government wanted to risk consequences that could not be controlled. Instead, competition shifted into other areas: politics, economics, science, technology, espionage, even sport and culture became part of the rivalry. The Cold War was no longer just about weapons. It became a global contest over influence and ideas. Every success mattered, every setback carried symbolic importance. The entire world was watching, and in the next chapter, the rivalry would spread far beyond Europe, into Asia, the Middle East, Latin America, and even outer space. As the Cold War intensified, the rivalry between the United States and the Soviet Union spread far beyond Europe. Neither side wanted a direct military confrontation. The risk of nuclear war was simply too great. Instead, they fought indirectly. Historians call these conflicts proxy wars, rather than fighting each other face to face. The two superpowers supported different countries, governments, and armed groups around the world. One of the first major examples came in 1950. The Korean Peninsula was divided into two parts. North Korea was backed by the Soviet Union and later China. South Korea received support from the United States and its allies. What began as a regional conflict quickly became an international crisis. After 3 years of intense fighting, millions had lost their lives. Yet the border remained almost exactly where it had started. Even today, North and South Korea remain divided. The Cold War had proven that even without direct fighting between the two superpowers, its consequences could be devastating. The competition soon expanded into another unexpected arena: space. In 1957, the Soviet Union shocked the world by launching Sputnik, the first artificial satellite. For the first time in history, humans had placed an object into orbit around the Earth. The achievement transformed the Cold War overnight. Many Americans feared the Soviet Union had gained a technological advantage. This marked the beginning of the space race. Both countries invested enormous resources into science, engineering, and education. The rivalry pushed humanity to achieve remarkable milestones. The Soviet Union sent the first human, Yuri Gagarin, into space in 1961. The United States responded with an ambitious promise. President John F. Kennedy declared that America would land a man on the moon before the end of the decade. 8 years later, in 1969, Apollo 11 succeeded. Neil Armstrong became the first human to walk on the moon. It was more than a scientific achievement. It became one of the defining moments of the Cold War. But while the world celebrated progress in space, events on Earth became increasingly dangerous. In 1962, the world came closer to nuclear war than ever before. American reconnaissance aircraft discovered Soviet nuclear missile sites under construction in Cuba, just 90 miles from the coast of Florida. The discovery triggered what became known as the Cuban Missile Crisis. For 30 intense days, the world held its breath. American naval forces surrounded Cuba. The Soviet Union refused to remove the missiles. Military forces on both sides prepared for the possibility of war. Governments developed emergency plans. Many ordinary families feared nuclear conflict was only hours away. Fortunately, intense diplomatic negotiations prevented catastrophe. The Soviet Union agreed to withdraw its missiles from Cuba. The United States secretly agreed to remove certain missiles from Turkey. The crisis ended peacefully, but it left a lasting lesson. Communication between world leaders could prevent disaster. Soon after, a direct hotline was established between Washington and Moscow, allowing leaders to communicate quickly during future emergencies. As the years passed, another major conflict dominated international headlines: the Vietnam War. The United States supported South Vietnam. North Vietnam received assistance from the Soviet Union and China. The fighting lasted 4 years. Despite overwhelming military resources, the war became increasingly unpopular. By 1975, North Vietnam had unified the country. The conflict demonstrated that military strength alone could not guarantee political success. Mea nuile trale. The nuclear arms race continued. Both superpowers built thousands of nuclear warheads, long-range missiles, strategic bombers, nuclear submarines. Each new development increased the destructive potential of future conflict. Vide 1980 segundos. The combined nuclear arsenals could destroy civilization many times over. Yet something unexpected was beginning to happen inside the Soviet Union. Its economy was struggling. Maintaining military competition with the United States had become enormously expensive. Many citizens demanded change. In 1985, Mikhail Gorbachev became the leader of the Soviet Union. He introduced major reforms known as glasnost, meaning openness, and perestroika, meaning restructuring. His goal was to modernize the Soviet system. Instead, the reforms accelerated dramatic political changes. Across Eastern Europe, people demanded greater freedom. Governments that had ruled for decades began to lose power. Then came one of the most iconic moments of the 20th century. November 9th, 1989, the Berlin Wall, which had divided East and West Berlin for nearly 30 years, opened. Thousands of people crossed freely. Families separated for decades embraced once again. Television cameras broadcast emotional scenes around the world. For many historians, the fall of the Berlin Wall symbolized the beginning of the end of the Cold War. Just 2 years later, in 1991, the Soviet Union officially dissolved. 15 independent nations emerged from its former territory. The Cold War, which had shaped global politics for nearly half a century, was over. Its legacy, however, continues to influence the world today. Military alliances formed during that era still exist. Nuclear weapons remain part of international security. Many regional conflicts have roots that stretch back to the Cold War. Even today's global politics cannot be fully understood without understanding this extraordinary period in history. The Cold War never became the world-ending conflict that many feared, but it transformed science, technology, international relations, and the lives of billions of people. It was a battle of ideas, a race for influence, and a reminder of how close humanity can come to disaster while still finding a path away from it. If you enjoyed this documentary, don't forget to like the video, subscribe to Lociannaro, and turn on notifications for more documentaries exploring the events that changed our world. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next documentary.